The morning sun cast a golden glow across the grounds of Kensington Palace as Princess Charlotte stepped out of the black Range Rover. Her small hand clutched a worn teddy bear, its fur matted from years of bedtime hugs. At just 7 years old, she had already attended dozens of royal events, but today felt different. Today, her mother had explained, they would visit the children's hospital, and Charlotte had insisted on bringing her favorite toy. Royal Guard Thomas Whitmore stood at attention near the palace gates. His red uniform pristine, his expression unreadable beneath the iconic bearskin hat. He had served the royal family for 12 years, never once breaking protocol. His father had been a guard and his grandfather before him. The Whitmores understood duty, discipline, and the invisible line that separated them from royalty. Charlotte's eyes sparkled with curiosity as she walked toward the motorcade. She noticed everything. The way the morning dew clung to the grass, how the birds sang in the ancient oak trees, the serious faces of the guards who lined their path. Her brother George walked ahead with their father, discussing something about football, while little Louis babbled happily in their mother's arms. As they approached the final checkpoint before departure, Charlotte's teddy bear slipped from her grasp. The beloved toy tumbled across the pristine gravel, rolling dangerously close to a drainage grate. Charlotte gasped, her small face crumpling with worry. Mr. Honeypaws, as she called him, had been her constant companion since she was 2 years old. He had survived flights to Australia, visits to Scotland, and countless royal engagements. Thomas saw the bear fall. Every fiber of his training told him to remain still, eyes forward, hands at his sides. Royal guards did not move unless ordered. They did not react to distractions. They were living statues, symbols of British tradition and unwavering discipline. His superior officer stood just 20 feet away watching. But Thomas also saw something else. He saw a little girl's eyes fill with tears. He saw her reach forward desperately, her small body stretching toward her precious toy as it teetered on the edge of the grate. In that split second, Thomas made a choice that would change everything. He broke formation. The movement was swift but gentle. Thomas stepped forward, his tall frame bending low as he scooped up the teddy bear just before it disappeared into the drain. Time seemed to slow as he held the worn toy, feeling its softness, seeing the careful stitching where an ear had been repaired, noticing the faded name tag that read, Mr. Honeypaws in childish handwriting. Charlotte's tears vanished, replaced by a smile so bright it could have lit up the entire palace. She looked up at Thomas, really looked at him, seeing not just a guard in a red uniform, but a person who had helped her when she needed it most. Thank you, she whispered, her voice small but sincere. Thomas felt his heart squeeze in his chest. He had expected immediate reprimand, perhaps even dismissal. But instead, he found himself looking into the grateful eyes of a child who reminded him so much of his own daughter, Emily, whom he saw only on weekends due to his demanding schedule. He handed the bear back to Charlotte, and as their hands touched briefly, something shifted in the air. The other guards had noticed. His commanding officer had definitely noticed. The photographers, always present, had captured the entire moment. Thomas straightened, returning to his position, knowing that consequences would follow. Princess Catherine, Charlotte's mother, had witnessed everything. She approached with Louis still in her arms, her expression thoughtful. Royal protocol was clear about guards maintaining their posts, but she had also seen genuine kindness in a moment when a child needed help. That was very kind of you, Catherine said quietly to Thomas, her voice carrying the warmth that had made her beloved by the British public. What's your name? Royal Guard Thomas Whitmore, Your Royal Highness, he replied, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Well, Guard Whitmore, my daughter is very grateful. Aren't you, Charlotte? Charlotte nodded enthusiastically, hugging Mr. Honeypaws tightly to her chest. He saved him, Mummy. He saved Mr. Honeypaws from the drain. Catherine smiled, but Thomas could see the complexity in her expression. She understood the rules he had broken, even if the reason was compassionate. She gave him a small nod before guiding Charlotte toward the waiting car. As the royal family departed for their hospital visit, Thomas remained at his post, his mind racing. His fellow guards said nothing, but he could feel their glances. Some seemed sympathetic, others disapproving. His commanding officer, Major Harrison, approached with measured steps. Guard Whitmore. My office, end of shift, Harrison said curtly. Yes, sir, Thomas replied, his stomach sinking. The rest of his shift passed in a blur. Thomas stood at his post, performing his duties with mechanical precision, but his thoughts were elsewhere. He thought about Emily, his 8-year-old daughter who would be devastated if he lost his position. He thought about the pride in his father's eyes when Thomas had first donned the uniform. He thought about the family legacy he might have just destroyed for a stuffed bear. But he also thought about Charlotte's smile, and he knew that given the same choice, he would do it again. As evening fell and his shift ended, Thomas made his way to Major Harrison's office, his footsteps echoing through the palace corridors. The ancient walls had witnessed centuries of British history, and now they would witness whatever came next for guard Thomas Whitmore. He knocked on the heavy wooden door. "Enter," came the gruff reply. Thomas stepped inside, standing at attention before the major's desk. Harrison was a man in his 50s, his face weathered by years of service, his uniform decorated with medals earned through decades of unwavering dedication to duty. He studied Thomas for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Do you know why you're here, Whitmore?" "Yes, sir. I broke formation without authorization." "You did more than that. You violated centuries of protocol. The Royal Guard does not move from their post for any reason short of direct threat to the royal family." Thomas said nothing. What defense could he offer? He had known the rules when he broke them. Harrison leaned back in his chair, and for the first time Thomas saw something unexpected in the older man's eyes. Not anger, but something else entirely. Something that looked almost like understanding. Harrison opened a drawer and pulled out a folder, placing it carefully on the desk between them. Thomas could see photographs inside, capturing the moment he had retrieved Charlotte's teddy bear. The images showed everything: his break from formation, Charlotte's grateful expression, the entire sequence that had violated protocol. "These photographs," Harrison began, his voice measured, "have already been seen by thousands of people. The palace press office has been fielding calls all afternoon. Social media is calling you a hero. The newspapers want interviews. There's even a hashtag trending about the guard with a heart." Thomas felt his face grow warm. He had never wanted attention. He had simply done what felt right in the moment. "However," Harrison continued, his tone becoming more serious, "you understand that feelings and good intentions cannot override 300 years of military tradition. The Royal Guard represents stability, reliability, and unwavering duty. If every guard acted on personal impulse, chaos would follow." "I understand, sir," Thomas replied, his voice quiet but firm. "I accept whatever consequences you deem appropriate." Harrison stood, walking to the window that overlooked the palace grounds. The evening light painted everything in shades of amber and gold. He was silent for a long moment, and Thomas could hear nothing but the ticking of an antique clock on the wall and his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. "20 years ago," Harrison finally said, not turning around, "I was stationed outside Buckingham Palace during a state dinner. It was raining, one of those terrible London downpours. A small dog, clearly lost, came running through the gates, terrified and soaked. It was heading straight for the traffic on the Mall." Thomas listened, surprised by this unexpected story. "I watched that dog and I thought about protocol, about duty, about the rules that had been drilled into me since basic training." Harrison turned now, meeting Thomas's eyes. "And then I thought about the fact that sometimes being a good soldier means being a good human being first. I broke formation. I caught that dog, and I faced consequences." "What happened, sir?" "I was reprimanded, formally. It went on my record." Harrison smiled slightly, a rare expression on his usually stern face. The dog belonged to a member of Parliament's elderly mother. She had been frantic. 2 weeks later, I received a commendation for representing the compassionate face of the British military. Life is complicated, Whitmore. Rules exist for good reasons, but so does mercy. Thomas felt a weight lift slightly from his chest, though he remained cautious. Harrison returned to his desk, picking up the folder once more. "You will receive a formal reprimand," Harrison said. "It will be noted in your file that you broke formation without authorization. This is necessary to maintain the integrity of our protocols." Thomas nodded, accepting this consequence. "However," Harrison continued, "you will also receive a private commendation from the palace. Princess Catherine specifically requested that your kindness be recognized. It seems Princess Charlotte has been telling everyone at the hospital today about the nice soldier who saved Mr. Honeypaws. You've made quite an impression. Guard Whitmore, For the first time in hours, Thomas allowed himself to breathe properly. Relief washed over him, mixed with lingering anxiety about his official reprimand. "There's something else," Harrison added. "The princess has requested your presence at a private tea next week. She wants Charlotte to properly thank you. It's highly unusual, but then again, this entire situation has been unusual." Thomas could hardly believe what he was hearing. A private tea with the royal family. It was unprecedented for someone of his rank. "I'm honored, sir," he managed to say. "Don't let it go to your head, Whitmore. You're still on duty this weekend, and I expect you to maintain the highest standards of conduct." Dismissed. Thomas saluted and left the office, his mind spinning with the day's events. As he walked through the palace corridors toward the exit, he felt the weight of centuries of history around him. The Royal Guard had protected British monarchs through wars, revolutions, and social change. He was a small part of that grand tradition, but today he had learned that tradition could coexist with compassion. When Thomas arrived home to his small flat in South London, his phone was buzzing with messages. His ex-wife Karen had texted multiple times, each message more excited than the last. She had seen the photographs online and heard the story from Emily, who had learned about it from friends at school. "Emily wants to talk to you. She's so proud. Call when you can." Thomas smiled, his exhaustion momentarily forgotten. He dialed their number and Emily answered on the first ring. "Daddy, everyone at school is talking about you. Mrs. Peterson showed us the pictures in class." "You're famous." Thomas laughed, the sound releasing the tension he'd been holding all day. "I'm not famous, sweetheart. I just helped a little girl who dropped her teddy bear. But she's a princess, Daddy. A real princess. And you were so brave." "It wasn't about being brave, Emily. It was about doing the right thing even when it might be difficult." "That's what Mummy said too." Emily's voice became thoughtful. "Daddy, can I ask you something?" "Of course, love. Do you think Princess Charlotte misses her teddy bear when she's at school like I miss Mr. Fluffington?" Thomas felt his heart melt. Emily's own stuffed animal, a rabbit she'd had since she was a baby, went everywhere with her. He thought about Charlotte's expression when Mr. Honeypaws had nearly fallen into the drain. Pure panic and love for something irreplaceable. "I think she probably does. Emily, I think all children love their special toys. Whether they're princesses or not." They talked for another 20 minutes, with Emily sharing every detail of her day and asking endless questions about the palace. When they finally said goodbye, Thomas felt a profound sense of gratitude. His job often kept him away from his daughter, but today his actions had given her something to be proud of, a story she would remember. Karen called moments later, her voice warm despite their complicated history. "Thomas, I know we have our differences, but I wanted to say well done. Emily hasn't stopped talking about it. She told her whole class that her daddy is a hero." "I'm no hero, Karen. I just picked up a toy." "You did more than that. You showed our daughter that rules are important, but so is kindness. That's worth more than you know." After they hung up, Thomas sat in his quiet flat still wearing his uniform and allowed himself to process everything. He thought about the moment he had made his choice, that split second when duty and compassion had pulled him in different directions. He had followed his instincts, and while there would be official consequences, he had also gained something valuable, a reminder of why he served in the first place. The royal family wasn't just symbols or figureheads. They were people, and his job wasn't just about standing still and looking impressive. It was about protecting those people with everything he had, even if sometimes that meant protecting a little girl's beloved teddy bear from a drainage grate. The following week passed in a strange blur of normalcy mixed with unexpected attention. Thomas returned to his regular duties, standing guard at various palace locations, maintaining the stoic discipline expected of the Royal Guard. But now people recognized him. Tourists would whisper and point, asking their companions if he was that guard from the news. Some even asked to take photographs with him, requests he had to politely decline while on duty. His fellow guards had mixed reactions. Some congratulated him quietly during breaks, sharing their own stories of moments when they had been tempted to break protocol for compassionate reasons. Others remained distant, viewing his actions as a dangerous precedent that could undermine their sacred traditions. Thomas understood both perspectives. He had not sought to become a symbol of anything, yet somehow he had become one anyway. On Wednesday afternoon, Major Harrison approached him during a shift change. "Whitmore, your tea with the princess is scheduled for tomorrow at 4 o'clock. You'll be off duty at 2, which gives you time to change into dress uniform. Palace etiquette officer will brief you at 3. Don't be late." "Yes, sir." "Thank you, sir." That night, Thomas barely slept. He rehearsed proper forms of address, worried about making mistakes, and wondered what one possibly talked about during tea with royalty. His flat seemed smaller than usual as he paced, practicing his posture and imagining various scenarios. The next day moved with agonizing slowness. His morning shift felt endless, each minute crawling by as tourists snapped photos and pigeons wandered across the palace grounds. When 2 o'clock finally arrived, Thomas rushed home to shower and change into his dress uniform, the one reserved for special ceremonies. He polished every button until they gleamed, checked his appearance multiple times in the mirror, and arrived at the palace with 40 minutes to spare. The etiquette officer, a thin woman named Mrs. Pemberton with silver hair and kind eyes, met him in a small anteroom. "Guard Whitmore, welcome. There's no need to look quite so terrified. The princess is very informal during private meetings, especially those involving the children." She smiled reassuringly. "You'll address her as Your Royal Highness upon first greeting, then ma'am afterward. If the Duke is present, the same applies, Your Royal Highness first, then sir. The children should be addressed as Princess Charlotte, Prince George, and Prince Louis, though the princess may invite you to be less formal." Mrs. Pemberton walked him through various scenarios, correcting his posture gently and offering encouraging words. By the time 4 o'clock approached, Thomas felt slightly more confident. Though his hands still trembled slightly, a staff member led him through corridors he had never entered before, past paintings of long-dead monarchs and ancient tapestries depicting historic battles. They arrived at a small, sunny sitting room that looked remarkably normal. Comfortable sofas, children's drawings displayed on a sideboard, toys tucked into a wicker basket in the corner. Princess Catherine entered with Charlotte holding her hand. Both were dressed casually, the princess in a simple blue dress and Charlotte in a pink sweater and jeans. The informality somehow made Thomas more nervous rather than less. "Guard Whitmore, thank you so much for coming." Catherine's handshake was warm and firm. "Please sit down. Charlotte has been looking forward to this all week." Charlotte clutched Mr. Honeypaws, now sporting a tiny red bow tie that hadn't been there before. She smiled shyly at Thomas, suddenly seeming much younger than her 7 years. "Hello, Princess Charlotte," Thomas said, sitting carefully on the edge of a sofa. "Mr. Honeypaws wants to say thank you," Charlotte announced, holding up the bear. "Mummy helped him get dressed up special for today." Thomas felt his nervousness begin to dissolve. This wasn't a formal state occasion. This was simply a little girl wanting to thank someone who had helped her. "Mr. Honeypaws looks very distinguished," Thomas replied seriously. "That's an excellent bow tie." Charlotte giggled, climbing onto the sofa next to her mother. "I told him about how you saved him from the drain. He says he was very scared and you were very brave." A staff member brought in a tea service with sandwiches, scones, and cakes. Catherine poured tea with practiced ease, asking Thomas about how he took it as if they were old friends rather than separated by centuries of class distinction. "Charlotte wanted to give you something," Catherine said, nodding encouragingly to her daughter. Charlotte reached behind a cushion and pulled out a drawing. It showed a tall figure in red with a distinctive bearskin hat, holding a small teddy bear. A little girl with a crown stood nearby, and the sun smiled down from a bright blue sky. At the top, in careful letters, it read, "Thank you for saving Mr. Honeypaws. Love, Charlotte." Thomas accepted the drawing with hands that shook slightly. He had received military commendations, awards for service, but nothing had ever touched him quite like this simple picture drawn by a child's hand. "This is wonderful, Princess Charlotte. Thank you. I'll treasure it. Really?" Charlotte's eyes lit up. "Will you put it on your wall?" "I absolutely will. In a very special frame." Catherine watched this exchange with a soft smile. "Charlotte has something she wants to ask you, if you don't mind." Charlotte sat up straighter, suddenly looking very serious. "Do you have children? Does your little girl have a special toy too?" Thomas nodded. "I have a daughter named Emily. She's 8 years old, just a bit older than you. And yes, she has a rabbit called Mr. Fluffington. She's had him since she was 2. Does she take him everywhere?" "She tries to," Thomas said, smiling at the memory. "Though we had to explain that Mr. Fluffington probably shouldn't go swimming in the sea when we went to Brighton." Charlotte laughed, and the sound was so genuine and delighted that it made Thomas laugh too. Catherine joined in, and for a moment the weight of protocol and position simply disappeared. They talked for nearly an hour. Catherine asked about Thomas's service, his family, and his life outside the palace. She shared stories about Charlotte's attachment to Mr. Honeypaws, including the time the bear had accidentally gone through the washing machine and emerged slightly smaller and much fluffier than before. Charlotte was inconsolable, Catherine recalled. She was convinced we'd ruined him forever. It took days to convince her that he was just very clean and very fluffy. Prince George appeared briefly curious about the visitor. He shook Thomas's hand with surprising formality for a boy his age and asked intelligent questions about what royal guards did all day. Prince Louis toddled in at one point, more interested in the cakes than in Thomas, which made everyone laugh. As the afternoon drew to a close, Charlotte approached Thomas shyly. "Guard Whitmore? Will you still be there? At the palace? When we drive by?" "I will be, Princess Charlotte, though I might be at different posts on different days. Can I wave to you? Would that be allowed?" Thomas glanced at Catherine, who gave a subtle nod. "I would be honored if you waved, Princess Charlotte, though I might not be able to wave back while I'm on duty." "That's okay," Charlotte said seriously. "I'll know you're waving in your heart." The word struck Thomas deeply. Waving in your heart. It was such a simple, pure way of understanding connection that existed beyond formal gestures and protocol. He realized that this little girl, raised in extraordinary circumstances, understood something fundamental about human kindness. As Thomas prepared to leave, Catherine walked him to the door personally, something that protocol didn't require but that she clearly wanted to do. "Guard Whitmore, I want you to know how much this afternoon has meant to Charlotte. And to me as well." Her voice was sincere, her eyes meeting his directly. "Being part of this family comes with many privileges, but it also means my children live very public lives. Moments of genuine kindness where someone sees them as children first and royals second are precious. Your Royal Highness, I only did what any decent person would do." "Perhaps," Catherine said thoughtfully, "but not everyone does. That's what makes it remarkable. You made a choice in a moment when it would have been easier to do nothing. You risked your career for a child's toy. That speaks to character." Thomas felt humbled by her words. "If I may say, ma'am, raising children who are kind despite their position speaks to character as well." "Princess Charlotte is a remarkable little girl." Catherine's smile was warm and genuine. "Thank you. We try very hard to give them as normal a childhood as possible, given the circumstances. People like you help remind them that the world is full of good, caring people." Thomas left the palace that evening with Charlotte's drawing carefully protected in a folder under his arm. He stopped at a frame shop on his way home, selecting a simple but elegant frame that would do justice to the artwork. The shop owner, an older gentleman with paint-stained fingers, examined the drawing with professional interest. "Your daughter's?" he asked kindly. "A friend's daughter," Thomas replied, not wanting to explain the whole story. "It's very special to me. That weekend when Emily came to visit, she was fascinated by the drawing now hanging prominently in Thomas's small living room. That's you, Daddy. She drew you." Emily traced the figure with one finger, careful not to touch the glass. "Can I draw a picture for Princess Charlotte?" Thomas hesitated. He didn't want Emily to think they were now friends with the royal family, but he also didn't want to discourage her generous impulse. "That's a lovely thought, sweetheart. Why don't you make something, and we'll see about the best way to share it." Emily spent the afternoon creating an elaborate drawing showing her with Mr. Fluffington meeting Charlotte with Mr. Honeypaws. The two teddy bears were shaking, hands or paws beneath a rainbow. At the bottom she wrote, "From Emily to Princess Charlotte. Our teddies should be friends." The innocence of it made Thomas's chest ache. Emily didn't see royal barriers or social divisions. She saw another child with a beloved toy, someone who could understand the importance of these worn stuffed animals that adults might dismiss as mere objects. Thomas contacted Mrs. Pemberton through official channels, explaining Emily's drawing. To his surprise, he received a response within 2 days. Princess Catherine had been touched by the gesture and would be delighted for Charlotte to receive Emily's artwork. Moreover, she wondered if Thomas might be willing to bring Emily to a children's tea at the palace in 2 weeks. Several families connected to palace staff were being invited, and Charlotte had specifically requested that Emily and Mr. Fluffington be included. When Thomas told Emily, she screamed with such joy that his neighbors probably wondered what emergency had occurred. Karen was equally shocked and pleased, though she worried about Emily's dress and manners and whether a 8-year-old could possibly behave appropriately at a royal event. "She'll be fine," Thomas assured his ex-wife. "It's meant to be informal. Just children being children." The 2 weeks passed with Emily practicing her curtsy in their living room, trying on various dresses, and rehearsing what she would say to Princess Charlotte. Thomas found her seriousness about it both amusing and touching. She treated this opportunity with the same intense focus she applied to school, projects, and dance recitals. The day of the tea arrived with typical London weather, gray skies threatening. Rain but holding off for now. Emily wore her favorite blue dress with white flowers, her hair carefully braided by Karen, who had delivered her that morning with detailed instructions about behavior and, gratitude. Thomas held Emily's hand as they entered the palace grounds through a side entrance reserved for staff and invited guests. She gripped Mr. Fluffington with her other hand, her eyes wide as they passed through corridors and rooms she had only seen in photographs. The tea was held in the palace gardens, weather permitting, under a large white tent decorated with colorful bunting and flowers. About 20 children were present, ranging from toddlers to preteens, children of palace staff, military families, and charity workers connected to causes the royal family supported. Charlotte spotted them immediately and rushed over. Mr. Honeypaws tucked under her arm. "You came, and you brought Mr. Fluffington." Charlotte's genuine excitement put Emily at ease immediately. "Your drawing is on my wall at home," Emily said shyly. "My daddy's drawing, I mean. It's so pretty. I loved your drawing, too. Mummy put it in my room." "Do you think they really should be friends?" Charlotte held up Mr. Honeypaws so he faced Mr. Fluffington. "Definitely," Emily said seriously. "All best teddies should know each other." Within minutes, the two girls were sitting together on a blanket, their stuffed animals arranged between them as they shared stories and secrets, the way children do when they find a kindred spirit. George joined them briefly, more interested in the miniature cakes than in teddy bear diplomacy, but still polite and welcoming. Thomas stood with other parents and staff members at the edge of the gathering, watching his daughter interact with the princess as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Catherine circulated among the guests, speaking with everyone, making each person feel valued and welcomed. She paused next to Thomas, following his gaze to where the two girls sat. "They're getting on wonderfully," she observed. "Emily hasn't stopped talking about this for 2 weeks. I think she's memorized every fact about Princess Charlotte from the internet." Catherine laughed softly. Charlotte was the same about Emily. She wanted to know everything, what her favorite color is, what games she likes to play, everything. It's good for her to have a friend who's interested in her as Charlotte, not just as a princess. Thomas watched as Charlotte and Emily giggled over something, their heads close together in that conspiratorial way children have when sharing something important. "Thank you for this, ma'am. You didn't have to invite Emily. The tea the other week was already more than generous. Guard Whitmore, you showed kindness to my daughter when you didn't have to, when it might have cost you your career. This," she gestured to the two girls, "is simply allowing kindness to grow into something more. Charlotte needs friends who see her for who she is, and Emily seems like a lovely child." The afternoon unfolded with games and songs, with stories read by Catherine and small performances by some of the more outgoing children. Emily and Charlotte were inseparable, creating an elaborate story about Mr. Honeypaws and Mr. Fluffington going on adventures to rescue other toys from various imagined perils. As the tea drew to a close, Charlotte approached Thomas directly, still holding Emily's hand. "Guard Whitmore, can Emily come again? Please? We're not finished with our teddy bear story. And I want to show her my room and my books and everything." Thomas glanced helplessly at Catherine, who had appeared beside them as if summoned by parental instinct. "I think that might be something we can arrange," Catherine said warmly. "Perhaps Emily could visit for a play date. If her parents agree, of course." Emily looked up at Thomas with such hopeful eyes that he couldn't have refused even if he wanted to. "We'll talk to your mum about it," he promised. Karen's reaction when he called her that evening was a mixture of disbelief and concern. A play date? At Kensington Palace? With Princess Charlotte? Her voice climbed an octave. "Thomas, this is insane. This doesn't happen to people like us." "It's happening to us," Thomas said simply. "And Emily was wonderful today." You would have been so proud of her, Karen. She was herself, polite, kind, funny. Charlotte clearly likes her. But what if Emily does something wrong? What if she breaks something priceless or offends someone? These are royals, Thomas. They're not like us. They're people, Karen, that's what I've learned from all of this. They're people who happen to have titles and live in palaces, but they're still people. And Charlotte is a 7-year-old girl who wants to play with a friend. Eventually, Karen agreed, though Thomas could hear the worry in her voice. She made him promise to coach Emily on proper behavior, to ensure she understood the importance of the situation. The play date was arranged for a Saturday afternoon 3 weeks later. Emily could barely contain her excitement in the days leading up to it. She selected books to bring, practiced her greetings repeatedly, and reorganized her room twice in case Charlotte ever came to visit her in return, something Emily was convinced would happen, despite Thomas's gentle attempts to manage expectations. On the day itself, Emily wore a simple pink dress and carried Mr. Fluffington in a small backpack. Thomas walked her to a private entrance where a staff member greeted them warmly and led Emily away. She looked back once, giving Thomas a nervous but excited wave before disappearing into the palace. Thomas waited in a small staff room, drinking tea and trying not to worry. Mrs. Pemberton appeared after a few minutes. "The girls are in the playroom. Catherine asked if you'd like to join the adults for coffee in the morning room. Some of the staff and a few other parents are there. She thought you might prefer company to sitting alone." Thomas followed her gratefully, finding himself in a comfortable room with several other people, including some palace staff he recognized from his daily duties. Catherine entered shortly after, still managing to make everyone feel at ease despite the formality of the setting. The girls are already deep into an elaborate game involving rescuing teddy bears from dragons, she reported with amusement. George is playing the dragon and taking his role very seriously. Louis is mostly just running around stealing biscuits from the tea set. The morning passed pleasantly, with conversation flowing easily among people who might never have met under normal circumstances. Thomas found himself talking with the palace librarian about his daughter's love of reading, with a chef about Emily's adventurous eating habits, with Catherine herself about the challenges of balancing work and parenthood. When the time came to collect Emily, Thomas found her in a colorful playroom that looked like any child's space, toys scattered about, drawings pinned to boards, books piled on shelves. Emily and Charlotte sat at a small table, creating an elaborate map of Teddy Bear Kingdom with colored pencils and glitter. "Daddy, look, we made a whole world for our teddies, and Charlotte says maybe we can write a book about them together." Charlotte nodded enthusiastically. "Mummy says if we write it and draw pictures, we can have it made into a real book. Just for us, not to sell or anything. A special book about Mr. Honeypaws and Mr. Fluffington's adventures." Over the following months, this idea became a project that connected the two girls. Emily would visit regularly, and between visits they would exchange drawings and story ideas through carefully supervised correspondence. Catherine facilitated this gently, understanding that her daughter had found a genuine friendship, something precious and rare in Charlotte's carefully structured life. Thomas's own life had changed in ways he couldn't have predicted that morning when he'd broken formation to rescue a teddy bear. He found himself invited to palace events more frequently, not as a guard but as a guest, as Emily's father, as someone who had become part of an extended community around the royal family. His relationship with his fellow guards evolved too. The initial tension from some quarters faded as they saw that Thomas hadn't let the attention go to his head. He remained professional, dedicated, and humble. The formal reprimand on his record became something of a badge of honor, proof that he had chosen compassion over convenience. Major Harrison became something of a mentor to Thomas, sharing stories of his own long career, offering advice about balancing duty with humanity. The older man seemed to take satisfaction in Thomas's continued success, as if it validated his own decision to be lenient in the face of protocol violation. On Emily's 9th birthday, a package arrived at their flat. Inside was a beautifully bound book, professionally printed but clearly created by children's hands. The cover read, "The Adventures of Mr. Honeypaws and Mr. Fluffington," with both girls' names listed as authors and illustrators. Thomas opened it carefully, finding a dedication page that made his throat tight. "For Guard Whitmore, who saved Mr. Honeypaws and helped two friends find each other. And for Emily's mom, who shares her. Love, Charlotte and Emily." Each page contained a story they had written together, with illustrations carefully drawn and colored. The tales were simple but imaginative. The teddy bears going to space, diving underwater, traveling to magical kingdoms. But running through all of them was a theme of friendship, loyalty, and helping others. Emily carried that book everywhere for months, showing it proudly to friends and teachers. It represented something more valuable than its binding and paper. It was proof that kindness mattered, that good actions had ripples, that barriers people thought were insurmountable could be crossed. Thomas framed one page of the book, the dedication, and hung it next to Charlotte's original drawing in his living room. Visitors often asked about them, and he would tell the story simply without embellishment. He had helped a child. That child had become his daughter's friend. Good things had grown from a single moment of choosing kindness over protocol. Karen noticed changes in Emily, too. Their daughter became more confident, more compassionate, more aware of using any privilege she might have to help others. She started a teddy bear drive at her school, collecting worn and loved stuffed animals to donate to children's hospitals, inspired by Charlotte's own charitable interests. You know, Karen said to Thomas one evening when he dropped Emily off after a weekend visit, "When we divorced, I worried about what kind of example you'd set for her. Working all the time, choosing your career over family time. But you've taught her something I couldn't have, that doing the right thing matters more than following rules that don't make sense. That kindness is worth the risk." Thomas felt emotion well up unexpectedly. Karen's approval had always mattered to him, even after their relationship ended. "I'm just trying to be someone she can be proud of," he said quietly. 2 years after that rainy morning when a teddy bear nearly fell into a drain, Thomas stood once again in Major Harrison's office. But this time the atmosphere was entirely different. Harrison smiled broadly. Something his subordinates joked was rarer than spotting the Queen riding a bicycle down the mall. "Whitmore, I'm pleased to inform you that you've been selected for promotion to Sergeant of the Guard. Your record has been exemplary, and your conduct both on and off duty reflects the highest standards of our service." Thomas felt pride swell in his chest. Sergeant. It was a rank his father had never achieved. A step forward in a career he'd feared might end the day he broke formation. "Additionally," Harrison continued, "you've been specifically requested for the ceremonial guard at Princess Charlotte's upcoming 10th birthday celebration. It seems the young princess has never forgotten your kindness, and Princess Catherine believes your presence would be meaningful." Charlotte's 10th birthday arrived on a beautiful spring day, one of those rare London mornings when the sun shone brilliantly and the air smelled of flowers and possibility. The celebration was being held at Kensington Palace, with a formal ceremony in the morning and a private party for family and close friends in the afternoon. Thomas stood in full ceremonial uniform, positioned at the entrance to the staterooms where the morning reception would take place. He had been standing for an hour when the royal family emerged for the official photographs. Charlotte had grown taller, more poised, but when she spotted Thomas, her face lit up with the same genuine smile she'd given him that day 2 years ago. After the official ceremony concluded, as guests moved toward the private party area, Charlotte approached Thomas directly, her parents following at a discreet distance. "Sergeant Whitmore," she said formally, then broke into a grin. "Look, I remembered your promotion. Congratulations." "Thank you, Princess Charlotte. And happy birthday. Will Emily be at the party this afternoon? I haven't seen her in 3 weeks, and I have so much to tell her about my school trip." "She will be. She's been counting down the days." Charlotte looked thoughtful for a moment, then said, "Sergeant Whitmore, I wanted you to know something. Mummy and I talked about it, and we decided that what you did, saving Mr. Honeypaws, was one of the kindest things anyone has ever done for me. Not because you're special or because I'm a princess, but because you saw someone who needed help and you helped them. Mummy says that's what makes people truly good." Thomas felt his composure waver. This child, raised in such extraordinary circumstances, had learned lessons about humanity that some adults never grasped. "You're very wise, Princess Charlotte. Your mother is right." Catherine stepped forward, her expression warm. "Charlotte has been working on something for today. She wanted to wait until her birthday to share it with you and Emily." "May I tell him, darling?" Charlotte nodded eagerly. Charlotte has established a small charitable fund with birthday money she's received over the years. It's called the Mr. Honeypaws Fund, and it provides teddy bears and comfort items to children in hospitals and care facilities. Emily's teddy bear drive at her school inspired the idea, but Charlotte wanted to expand it. The first distribution is happening next week. Thomas felt overwhelmed. A simple act of retrieving a dropped toy had grown into something that would comfort hundreds of children. That's remarkable, Princess Charlotte. Truly remarkable. The private party that afternoon was filled with joy and laughter. Emily and Charlotte disappeared immediately into the gardens with a small group of other children, their friendship as strong as ever despite the irregularity of their visits. Thomas watched them play, seeing how naturally they interacted, how Charlotte seemed to relax around Emily in ways she couldn't with children who saw her title before her personality. Prince William, whom Thomas had rarely spoken with directly, approached him during the party, holding a cup of tea and looking remarkably casual in khakis and a sweater. Sergeant Whitmore, I wanted to thank you personally for your kindness to Charlotte. As a father, you understand how precious our children are to us. You saw my daughter as a child who needed help, and you provided it without hesitation. That means more than I can adequately express. Sir, I only did what any father would hope someone would do for his child. William smiled. Perhaps, but not everyone does. Catherine and I work hard to teach our children that their position comes with responsibility. Responsibility to be kind, to be aware of privilege, to use whatever advantages they have to help others. You reinforce that lesson through your actions. Charlotte watched you risk something important for something she valued. That's powerful. As the afternoon sun began to set, casting golden light across the palace gardens, Thomas found himself standing with Emily, watching Charlotte blow out candles on an elaborate birthday cake shaped like Kensington Palace. Daddy, Emily said quietly, leaning against his side, do you think Charlotte knows how lucky she is? Thomas considered the question carefully. I think Charlotte knows she's fortunate, yes. But I also think she understands that fortune comes with responsibility. She's using her birthday to help other children. That shows real character. I want to help too. With the fund, can I? I think that's a wonderful idea, sweetheart. We'll talk to Princess Charlotte and her mum about it. As the party wound down and guests began departing, Charlotte gave Emily a long hug, made her promise to write soon, and then approached Thomas one final time. Sergeant Whitmore, Mr. Honeypaws wanted me to give you something. She held out a small box wrapped in blue paper. Thomas opened it carefully, finding a silver pin in the shape of a teddy bear, clearly custom made. On the back was engraved, for Sergeant Thomas Whitmore, who taught us that kindness matters most. With gratitude, Charlotte. I can't accept this, Princess Charlotte. It's too much. Please, Charlotte said seriously. You kept something precious safe for me. This is to help you remember that what you did mattered, that it still matters. Thomas looked at Catherine, who nodded encouragingly. He accepted the pin, knowing he would treasure it always. Not for its material value, but for what it represented. A moment when choosing compassion had created ripples that continued to spread. 5 years later, Thomas attended Charlotte's 15th birthday celebration. Now a lieutenant in the Royal Guard, Emily was there too. Now a confident teenager who volunteered regularly with the Mr. Honeypaws Fund, which had expanded to serve children across the United Kingdom. The two girls had maintained their friendship despite different schools and increasingly demanding schedules. Their bond forged in shared teddy bear adventures, proving stronger than the barriers of circumstance. Thomas still wore the teddy bear pin on his dress uniform for special occasions. People would sometimes ask about it, and he would tell them the story. Not as a tale of his own importance, but as a reminder that small acts of kindness could change lives in unexpected ways. Charlotte's original drawing still hung in his living room, now accompanied by dozens of photographs documenting years of friendship between two girls who had found each other, because an adult chose compassion over protocol. Emily's drawing of the two teddy bears shaking hands hung beside it. Both images faded slightly with time, but no less meaningful. Major Harrison, now retired, visited Thomas occasionally for tea and chess. During one such visit, the older man studied the framed pictures and smiled. You know, Whitmore, when I decided not to dismiss you that day, I had no idea what would come of it. I simply believed that good people making good choices should be given grace when those choices conflict with rules. You gave me a second chance, sir. I've tried to be worthy of it. You've exceeded it. You showed that being a good soldier and being a good man aren't mutually exclusive. You've raised a remarkable daughter, And you helped a young princess learn that her position is an opportunity for kindness, not just privilege. Thomas thought about that first moment, standing frozen in indecision as a teddy bear rolled toward a drain. He thought about the split second when he chose to move to help, to risk everything for something that mattered to a child. He had not known then that his choice would lead to friendship, to charitable works, to lessons learned and lives touched. He had simply seen a little girl who needed help, and he had helped her. Sometimes, Thomas reflected, the most important decisions we make are the ones where we choose to be human first, to let compassion guide us even when it's difficult or risky. Charlotte had been right all those years ago. Sometimes the most important waves are the ones we make in our hearts, the invisible gestures of kindness that connect us across any divide. Mr. Honeypaws, now showing his age with patches and careful stitching, still sat on Charlotte's bedroom shelf, a reminder that being saved isn't just about rescue. It's about being seen, being valued, being deemed worthy of someone's kindness, and in being saved, that worn teddy bear had saved something too. He had saved the opportunity for friendship, for growth, for two families to find unexpected connection. Thomas kept Emily's Mr. Fluffington safe at his flat, waiting for her weekend visits. The rabbit showed similar signs of devoted love, worn fur, repaired seams, the unmistakable character of a toy that had been truly treasured. As he stood at his post years after that fateful morning, Thomas sometimes caught glimpses of Charlotte driving past with her family,